Welcome everybody to the first studio exchange, and we're just inviting you to have a coffee or a tea with us.
So in these weekly chats, we cover all sorts of things from creative topics, might have been things that we have come across on social media, things that people are talking about, or even answering frequently asked questions or answering new questions. If you have any questions for us, you can pop them down in the comments below, or we can answer some questions from Instagram as well. Wherever you find us, we will answer those questions here.
Yeah, in the interim, because we don't have those questions yet, we've created our own. So we're going to start with a couple of topics that we're asked about a lot. Yeah, so we'll start with, what's the first one, George?
Okay, this is probably the most sensitive one for a lot of creatives. Do you make any money?
Yeah, pretty offensive really, isn't it? I certainly get offended when people say that, or along the lines of, oh, it's so lovely you've got that as a hobby. Like, but essentially, yeah, we do make money. Our creative business is based on the fact that we have multiple income streams, and that's become increasingly important in my view and Georgie's view and our producer Horbard's view. So that's why we talk a lot about different ways to actually maximise what we're producing.
Yeah, and I think the thing is, in the world that we're living in, when you have a creative career that diverges from the regular path, like the 9-to-5 world path, I think there's a narrative, a preset narrative that has been set up around creative industries. It's almost like the scary stories that people tell their kids at night, where it's like, oh, don't be a creative, you'll be a starving artist. We talk about this all the time because we're all about busting the starving artist myth. You can live a happy, balanced life and cover your bills while also being a creative person and not having a traditional career. I think that a lot of the time, obviously, the 9-to-5 career has been popular since the early 20th century, or very much since the Industrial Revolution, but Henry Ford was the one who popularized that whole movement. And since then, society has literally been constructed around and conditioned around everyone essentially going into school, going into primary school, and then going to high school, and then going into university or into a trade. But ultimately, that whole system is built around getting people into the 9-to-5 world. So naturally, as a society, we are conditioned to believe that the only way that you can make money in this world and be safe and comfortable is to have a traditional career. And obviously, if you have taken one look at our content, at our businesses, you would see that we are about the furthest thing from traditional, and that's actually our superpower.
Yeah, and it can, and it has at times been a bit of a curse that some people have actually said to me, but why don't you just choose one over the other? Well, that is actually not me. I paint, I write, and I create ceramics. They're my three disciplines, and I float between all of them depending on what is required of me at any given time. And I think that as a Gen X, and there'll be Gen Xers out there who appreciate this, when I was in high school, I was pretty much told you have to study science, you have to study maths. Ironically, as a ceramic artist, I did do chemistry up until year 10, I suppose. So Americans, that would be sophomore. Is that sophomore for Americans? I think it's about year 10 in Australia. And I loved chemistry, which was a bit bizarre. And I've used that knowledge in glaze technology and all sorts of things in ceramics. But really, at the end of the day, training me for a job in science was a complete waste of space and a complete waste of time. And what disturbed me was that without art in society, we have no culture. And imagine how boring, our lives would be without art, whether that be music, whether that be painting, whether that be ceramics, whether that be photography, whatever creative pursuit you choose, whether that be textiles, whether that be whatever, making baskets. If you don't have that beautiful handmade and creative human creativity involved, our society would be so boring and so dull and so colourless. And it has always disturbed me, especially as a Gen Xer, that we were told really that creativity wasn't a specifically good career path, and that you could never make money from it, and you could never have anything meaningful in terms of a career. So basically, Georgie has had a mother who's been probably consistently saying to her from the time she was a child, do what you love. Do what you're passionate about. And I was one of those terrible parents, probably in parent-teacher interviews, where they'd say, Georgina has got a lot of aptitude in creative areas, but she probably needs to study maths, and she probably needs to not do so many languages or music or whatever it might have been, or all of those subjects mean that she's cutting off a lot of options. What options when you're creative? Do you tell a maths student, I remember saying once, do you tell a maths or a science student that they have to take up art, that they have to be musical, that they have to be an English literature student? Do you do that? No, they don't. So there's a real imbalance in terms of what is seen as a legitimate career. Sorry, I'm just getting on my soapbox.
No, it's fine. I mean, it's the soapbox that you set up for me as well. where ultimately, I distinctly remember that meeting I had. It was a careers meeting when I was in year 10, and they sat me down and they were like, you need to do maths and science and, year 10, 11, 12.
Yeah.
Or especially year 11 and 12, the final 2 years of high school in Australia. I remember saying to them, I have my English, my writing, I have my music, and I have my art. Those are 3 things that I excel at, that I'm really good at. Why on earth would you try and push me to do maths and science when those are the subjects that I am failing at? If it's about me getting the best mark that I can possibly get, why on earth would you make me go and do subjects that are not my strengths? And they kind of sort of blinked at me and they said, but you're closing so many doors on yourself if you don't do maths and science. And I just said to them, I've just literally presented you with 3 doors wide open to me. Those could be used in multiple different industries. And ironically, as an adult and as a creative, I've used all of those skills. Maybe not music, but I think the confidence associated with music performance. Horvath, who is the producer of this channel, has often said how it's bizarre. One moment I can go from being in my head or stressed about something, and the next minute just switch on and be able to talk to camera or talk on Instagram or whatever. And that is, I reckon, because of the music foundations and things as well. And I would say even for you too, you were obviously creative and a performer in school. So I think there's that aspect intertwined, but ultimately I think there really needs to be a massive shift in the narrative, which we're going to, obviously put forward on this channel and always talk about, but not spooking kids away from a creative career, and not even spooking adults away from a creative career by making them feel like they're not going to make any money. Because if you want me to put it into perspective for you, pre-industrial revolution, and I'll have to find the exact statistic. I actually got this from Horvath, and I'm looking at him beyond the camera. But pre-industrial revolution, I think it was around 80 to 90% of all people in the world were technically self-employed. So to put that into perspective, the one thing that's now being villainized by the current world that we live in is actually the one thing that people were very used to doing for centuries, if not thousands of years.
Yeah, and there probably will be some kind of return to that, because there's almost like a revolt against AI in one respect. I'm not saying that we shouldn't embrace AI. We're fully integrating AI just to make things a little bit easier for us sometimes, but our content is always authentic for a reason, because we show up. But I do think that the augmented AI and alongside human creativity will be immensely helpful, because as a small business, it's very hard to keep up otherwise. So it can be helpful. But there are so many different things that I knew, even just watching you kids at school and those conversations that we had with teachers. I was that tiger mum, but I was a tiger mum for not my kids to get 100% in anything, but for my kids to do what they were good at and what they wanted to do. So there have been, I'm sure, plenty of teachers here, if they're ever watching, will probably understand that I was pretty forthright as far as getting my kids to do what they wanted.
And I just think that more broadly, it's an important thing to acknowledge with creatives, that so many creatives have experienced that, and they might not have had a tiger mum in their corner, and they might have got, 15 years into a degree, or 20 years, into a career, or 20 years into a career, and all along always wanted to be creative and live a creative life.
You hear that a lot. You hear, people who've been in a corporate life suddenly, pulling back from that and actually going to paint or going to make something and live, very simply on the land, or become self-sustainable, all those sorts of things. Sometimes, and corporate life may be for other people and quite happily for other people, but I think that we should just respect the choice of those creatives who decide to do it along a different path.
Exactly. And I think my hope for the world is that creative people are no longer made to feel like it's a shameful thing, or it's, it's a path that you shouldn't go down, because what if it doesn't work? Like, there's so much fear attached to having a creative career, when the crazy thing is, most of the creative people we know, and I've always said this all along, creative people are excellent problem solvers. So if the problem that you're trying to solve is, how do I make more money as a creative, you have plenty of creative solutions at your disposal. That is something that you are more than capable of figuring out as a creative person. And how incredible is it as a creative that you are actually able to generate more money with your hands, with your mind? You can literally come up with an idea overnight and make money from it. There's few other industries that you could literally say, oh, I really need to make an extra $500 this week. And because they're in a fixed contract in a job in a particular industry, that just doesn't happen. They might go through their garage and sell something for Facebook Marketplace. But you as a creative person have everything that you actually already need at your disposal to make a successful creative career. It's all about leveraging the tools that you already have. It's all about leveraging the experience that you already have. And it's about getting creative with those ideas and with those ways that you can generate a consistent income for yourself.
Yeah, you can do it. You can do it. What else are we going to say?
This is a really good one. So we've been asked this quite a bit, obviously outside of YouTube, just in conversation. But how do you deal with competitive creatives and community? This is a really interesting one.
I don't care. Quite frankly, I don't care, because if you're not part of my tribe, you're not part of my tribe. So again, if someone doesn't want to watch us on YouTube, it's not any skin off our noses. If you enjoy watching it, great, that's why we're here. But essentially, competitive creatives are actually quite toxic, aren't they? And you've all encountered them. I know you have. So I think the important thing is that there is room for everybody. There is room for everybody's creativity. The more positive energy that we put out there, and the more creativity that we put out there, is a better place for everybody. I think people who aren't particularly creatives are the ones who are competitive, who are the ones who are toxic, who are the ones who want to bring you down a peg or two. Not on. So if you show up with great sort of, as some of our beautiful spiritual guides are inclined to say, with love and light, like if you show up with that and you just show up being you, and you show up being proud of what you do, then those competitors just don't even enter into your orbit, because quite frankly, you just mirror that energy back to where you came from.
One of my sort of favorite sayings around this is that when it comes to being a creative, you ultimately want to surround yourself with the people. And because I think sometimes an underestimated thing is that you can try and build your creative community, or try and build a community, and then realize that you're actually surrounding yourself with competitive people, or competitive friends even. But ultimately, when it comes to being creative, you have to surround yourself with the people who believe that you are just as capable and deserving of success as they are, because it's all very well and good to say, let's all go and support this one person, but you want that party to show up, for your moment too. You want them to cheer and celebrate you on, not just celebrate one person in the group who supposedly should be more successful than the others, right? So ultimately, remember that a lot of the competition exists at the bottom and collaboration exists at the top.
So true.
And
true.
Ultimately, I think that through all of our experience across multiple different creative sectors, obviously I've spent a lot of time in the photography sector in the past 6 years. Photography, especially, I would say, I mean, I've had really amazing interactions with a lot of American photographers. So I'm probably more speaking about the experience in Australian photography culture, because we are a much smaller population and therefore the market is seen as being a lot more competitive. But I think
there's a tall poppy syndrome in Australia, where if you do well at something, people like to drag you down. It's actually not what you'd find in America, which is such a relief to see people really propping each other up and encouraging people to be the best that they can be. In Australia, it's actually a little bit disappointing. I'm not saying that everyone does that. That's not the case at all. We have some beautiful followers in Australia.
Beautiful friends, obviously, who are very supportive.
Who are so supportive. And all that sort of thing. But as a general rule, that's where the cultures are slightly different.
Because I think the thing, if you look at Australia on a base level, like Australia post-colonisation, a lot of the people who came to Australia were might have been the third and fourth son, or it might have been their last dollar, essentially, or their last pound.
Or they were convicts.
Well, they're convicts. And, you know, like the Brits still call us prisoners. So, but ultimately, if you're English, please don't call us that in the comments. And if you do, then you're just ratting yourself out as a Brit. But but anyway, but ultimately, like, because of the way that Australia started, just for a bit of context, because I think this is something that internationals don't often realise about Australian culture, is that because of the way that Australia started, like, work hard, everyone was coming out to pan for gold, right? Everyone was trying to have their big lucky break that would make them rich. Some people did get very, very wealthy out of that particular period. But there's an inherent competitiveness in Australian culture, and as Mum said, like a tall poppy syndrome as well, sometimes attached to success. So when you look at this, I mean, you may very well experience this in other countries too. I just know that Australia has a special flavour for being a bit competitive.
Australia has a rather, you know, a propensity for this sort of thing.
If you've seen us in any kind of global sport, you'll feel that.
We punch above our weight in sport. I won't go down that.
We get very competitive, but I guess my point is with this is that, you know, how do you navigate that space? It's all well and good for us to say, just show up and be yourself and be authentic. That's obviously very, very important, and it's very true. But in terms of how you show up around competition, I genuinely believe, and this leans on what you said before, I believe that when people become jealous or competitive in creative spaces, it can largely be linked back to some kind of deep insecurity or some kind of unsureness around what they're doing, right? So when it comes to something like photography, I started mentioning this before, but with competitiveness in photography industries, a lot of it does come down, maybe especially in Australia, to that competitiveness around, are you booking more jobs than me? Are you stealing clients from me, or that sort of thing? But I actually believe it's because pointless. I believe a lot of people haven't worked out exactly, I don't like the word niche, but they haven't worked out exactly where their creative work sits. And in the Creative Toolkit, we talk about this as being your creative signature. Like, if you really understand what your creative signature is as a person, what your work looks like, it doesn't matter what industry you are working across or the sorts of clients for you, that your work is distinctively yours. And I think this is where there's a lot of an issue, you know, with competitiveness across multiple creative industries. People actually just haven't inherently worked out who they are as a creative or who exactly they want to work with. Because if you are, you know, locked in on the kind of work that you want to do and you're the kind of creative that you want to be, you don't think about the competition and you don't feed into it and you don't get caught up in it.
I really believe that competition is something that you can invent in your mind, and we'll explore this a little bit further in that it's really important to not swim in your own lane, because that means it's very confined, but to actually swim in that lane until you're ready to change lanes. And I personally think that what we've discovered over the last few years is that we've just chosen to follow the paths that we have. So anyway, moving on to our next question.
Okay, so we have covered, do you actually make money and how do you make money as a creative how do you deal with competitive creatives and community? Because obviously most creatives are worried that there's not enough space for them or that it's a saturated market. The lean onto that is, should I even start a business? We actually get this question a lot, and a lot of people stay in that state of paralysis with starting a creative business because they think that it's either too overcrowded, or they don't know if their idea is strong enough, or they fluctuate between ideas and all that sort of stuff. With the current state of the world at the moment, Mum, should people start a creative business?
Oh gosh, I know there's all of that instability out there, and it can be quite frightening, but I saw something either on YouTube or Instagram the other day which really resonated with me, which was that we have two choices, either to live through fear or through love. Now, without getting too sort of, oh, love it, but it is a positive vibe. We're, as humans, designed to be either positive or negative. And if you look at it realistically, you've actually got to be really quite powerfully in that positive energy, because even a positive and a negative equals a negative. So mathematical, very, an empirical view of that. Even if the world is unstable, there's always room for you to expand, and it's in fact really important that you do. And if it starts from the nucleus of you and your creativity and your family, and then your community, all of those positive vibes, I suppose, for want of a better word, have to have an impact, and that collective. So as a creative collective, it's actually incumbent on all of us to not be afraid. So that's my advice, is to just say, if you want to start something, there's never a better time than now. Even if things are harder externally, think about how that's directly affecting you right now. Now, it might be fuel prices, it might be an inability to travel, it might be a whole lot of other things. But in countries where we're living in relative peace, you have opportunity, so take it.
I think the other thing as well, when it comes to starting a business, the biggest thing that inhibits people just starting is ultimately thinking they have to have everything figured out, and that they have to have, this whole concept, this whole 5-step plan of where their business is going to go, and what every role in the business is going to be, and what type of company car everyone's going to drive, and all those sorts of things. And they literally circle the idea of starting a business endlessly without actually just diving in and beginning. And I think that if you have been tossing up whether you should start a business or even starting an Instagram account or anything, the best thing that you can possibly do is start and work it out. I can tell you for a fact that when I left my 9-to-5 job, I was obviously coming into work in at Hope & Co, and I picked up photography to capture the studio. I did not know at that point that I was going to have a photography business, or that I'd end up being an award-winning brand photographer or be published in magazines or work around the world. I didn't know any of that. I just knew that that path in the 9-to-5 corporate world wasn't for me. Ultimately, just start, because once you do start, you have the momentum to figure out the rest of the steps in the business. I'm not saying don't have a business plan. We have a business plan. We have quarterly meetings. We operate just as any business should. But when it came to starting in the creative sector, the most valuable thing that we could do to begin with was just start posting, for example, photography, start posting photos on Instagram. If you create art, make that Instagram account or make that YouTube account where you're sharing your art with the world, because people keep waiting for momentum and inspiration and motivation to find them, but ultimately those things come from your momentum of actually beginning. So it's really important to understand that. I think that you're never going to just be inspired or suddenly be motivated. You have to create that momentum for yourself.
Yeah, and the other thing too is just be true to yourself about what you want to post. I know there are algorithms and all that sort of stuff, but it's about your creativity. Putting yourself out there is really important, and your personality will be different from Instagram or whoever's algorithm. And I saw something today which actually really annoyed me, and it was a post from someone, I'm not going to say who, but was basically, stop making process videos if you're an artist. Well, all the people that virtually comment on my process videos say how much they love seeing process videos. So who's telling you not to do process videos? It's like someone, so I think it's, it's really interesting. Just show up the way you want to. And I think Georgie's point where, you just start and then start doing all the business bits as you go along and as you gain your confidence. Would you say that?
Yeah.
Just that as you get your confidence and as you're starting to formalize your business idea.
Exactly.
And this is Georgie and Horvath's sort of expertise now in actually formulating creative businesses with Creators Toolkit, which we can add in the links below if you're interested in having a look. But it's kind of a really interesting phase, whether it's the chicken or the egg. But ultimately, you have to start with an idea and start.
Ultimately, fundamentally, there's one thing that you take away from this whole conversation. It's that your creativity is your superpower, and how you choose to integrate that and leverage that and build something out of that is completely up to you, which is actually a really empowering place to be.
Yeah, bravo. I love that. Now, there's one more thing that we're going to trial, and if you're not interested in tarot, you can switch off now. So that's basically our studio exchange. But I introduced Georgie to tarot a while back, and I might be an unsuspecting tarot queen, but I've been using tarot cards over the last few years, and I've really enjoyed the guidance, I suppose, or just understanding from a more spiritual point of view where we all come from creatively. And so what we're going to do at the end of each studio exchange is draw some tarot cards. I'm going to draw 3 cards, and then Georgie's going to draw the clarifiers from the same deck. And we're just going to see what the creative mood is for the week, or the energy is for the week.
For the collective of
For the
creatives.
collective, for the creative collective. And, you know, if you watch any tarot channels, there are a lot about relationships, but we're not going to do that. We're not going to make this a love reading. This is about a general energy surrounding creatives as a collective, as we said. So this is a really interesting tarot deck. This actually belonged to Horvath's grandfather. So it's a vintage deck. I don't know what its origins are. If anyone knows, they can tell us what the brand is. But we're going to go with this. And so I'm just going to shuffle the cards. I did pre-shuffle the cards before we came on, but we'll just see what comes out. And who loves tarot? I love tarot.
I really feel like this is reminding me of those like student channel talk shows. In a good way.
I think that one wanted to come out. Okay.
In a good way.
I just want 2 more cards. And then Georgie's going to shuffle and bring out the clarifiers. Oh. Wheel of Fortune. Whoa.
Oh, there's 2. You've got 2.
Oh, I've got 2. Okay. All right, then. I'm just going to put those back, and I'm just going to see. Ooh, it's a 6 of Wands. See if that one comes out again. All right, so my 3 cards are the 4 of Swords. Oh, my God, you girls and guys have been beating yourselves up. You need a bit of a rest. The Hierophant and the Wheel of Fortune. So we have, the 4 of Swords, the Hierophant, and the Wheel of Fortune as our creative energy for the week.
Oh.
Clarified by
I'll pop him back in.
Page of Wands.
Oh, actually, no, do you know what?
No, put it out.
It's going to come out.
The 9 of Swords. One more card. Come on, Spirit.
We probably should have done the whole like opening up a channel to receive information. Only divine love and light are allowed in this space with us.
Namaste. I honestly love all the tarot readers I watch.
Oh, pages, all pages.
All pages. Okay, so essentially the 4 of Swords.
I've split the deck as well, and the bottom of the deck.
Bottom of the deck, yeah.
7 of Cups.
7 of Cups. Bottom of the deck, what you don't see is the Magician. Okay, that is really interesting. So essentially it's been a really exhausting time for everybody, and the 4 of Swords is about actually taking time to rest, to absorb, to think. It's followed by the Hierophant, which can refer to legal issues, can refer to someone being in your life that is a bit of a boss. So it may be that you need some time and space away from authority. It could be that the Wheel of Fortune, as more or less the 3rd card, is your destiny is at play here. So it kind of, the energy is crazy, isn't it? It's sort of more or less takes on what we've been talking about. It's weird. So the clarifying cards, we've got the Page of Wands, and we've got the 9 of Swords, and the Page of Pentacles. So we're in page energy. There are no queens, no kings. So it may be the early phase for some of you in your creative journey. And the Page of Wands is sort of, he is stationary in this card, and he's standing and waiting, but he's sort of, as we said, kind of ready to pounce. But it is causing you some stress, and obviously there's this authority figure in your life that is causing you some stress at the moment. Now, whether that's limitations with regulations, whether it's someone specific who is actually putting you down about what you want to do, it's quite interesting. And the Page of Pentacles, I find this fascinating that it's clarifying the Wheel of Fortune, because it is actually saying that baby steps, because the Page of Pentacles is one of the slowest pages, or the slowest page really. The Page of Pentacles is saying take baby steps towards your goal. That's how I see it.
Well, like one of my favorite quotes is, the steps you take don't have to be big, they just have to be in the right direction. And I think my interpretation of this is probably a little bit less of, I feel there's more of a broad energy. So I see the Hierophant here as representing systems and things that might not necessarily be a specific person, but it could be a particular system. And obviously we even touched on this earlier in the readings. I feel like that's quite on the money in terms of, I think a lot of creatives at the moment, and just generally people who want to live sort of a more gentler, or sort of live life in a way where they're a bit more in control of their own world, essentially, and the way that things exist on a daily basis. This to me is contemplation, you know, and taking time out. It could be even meditating, or it could just be, you could even, whatever is rest to you. This could be going for a walk. This could be, you know, just taking a quiet day when you might normally, let's say you have a day off work or something, and rather than trying to get in all of those chores on a day, it could be actually just dropping into your body a bit more and
sitting in the sun, reading,
and just thinking about these sorts of things. And I really do believe that this represents a lot of thought here as well. And wands are obviously passion, creativity, and the page is sort of that new passion, that new creativity. This to me feels like when you first start something, or even, you know, through whether that is meditation or thinking about these sorts of things. With this as a clarifier, I feel like this is reconnecting with that sense of early inspiration that you might have had with your creative craft, or with a business, or with something that you want to do. This to me, the Hierophant and the Nine of Swords is stress around that system, as Mum was saying. And I do generally read this as a lot of worry about breaking away from the system, and a lot of worry about going against, you know, some form of authority, whether that is, you know, quite literally on a broad scale, like the world that you're living in, the country that you're living in, the region that you're living in, you know, how things are normally done, or even within your own family, the way that things are normally done, and feeling quite a bit of stress about that. But ultimately the outcome, I completely agree with you here, that this is an early beginning. This is, the page is an early form of abundance and grounding things down into like the physical world.
Yeah, and protecting that pentacle. And pentacles represent money, so it's about, as I said, baby steps. But I think it's really interesting that the split of the deck is the Seven of Cups, which is sort of the card of the unknown, and it is, you don't know quite what you're going to get, which is interesting. But it is, the bottom of the deck is what you don't see, and that is the Magician. And if that is you, then it's your ability to actually create. You actually have the power to do that. So try and overcome your fear. We talked about fear, you know, and in two places. You can either be in fear, or you can be in love, or if you want to look at it less spiritually, you're either in negative or positive. So try and see your glass half full, and try and work on the positives, because if you don't start with a positive, you're never going to get there. And I don't mean that in a horrible way, but you really have to start with your glass half full.
And also the benefit of this card too, I love seeing this card, is a lot of people think that creatives, you know, are flighty, they can't make decisions, they can't commit to anything. This to me always symbolizes lots of options.
Yeah, the power of options.
So many options and lots of doors. And that's the thing we actually, again, talked about earlier in this whole video. was that concept that you actually have so many more doors open to you than you realize. You have so many more ways to generate your own abundance. If you even look at like in these cards here, they are, you know, one here in particular is just overflowing with abundant things. So you as a creative person have the ability to manifest. This is a magician, the creator. They have every tool at their disposal here to create whatever it is that they want to bring into this world and whatever world they...
Good summation, George. Good summation.
Thank you.
At the end of the day, though, the first outcome card is the Wheel of Fortune.
The wheel's turning.
The wheels are turning. So on that note, Georgie and I are going to sign off from the Studio Exchange. If you like the tarot, just let us know. If you don't, let us know. But but we love it, and we're
if you
happy
think
to
this should
share.
be a separate channel,
If you think
let us know.
Yeah,
we're
we
just
could be
feeling
the-
our way back into the beginning of this.
We could just be the creative witches. At the end of the day, it's really interesting how the cards really kind of match what we've been talking about.
Exactly.
So it's the energy. So
That's so much fun. I really love the tarot. That's good.
okay. See you next
On that
week.
note, bye.